This is Vicky, also known as Dragonfly7673. This is Tiger, also known as Tigger the Pest, who seems, I still say he thinks this is his show. Anyway, this is February 3rd. It's a Tuesday, and it's almost 7 o'clock. It's much later than I would normally want to be recording, but I ended up, well, not really stuck at work, but I was at work because I was trying to finish something up that will cause me less aggravation on another day. So, and then the drive home was slow, and then I all of a sudden realized that even though I had kind of collected stuff for the podcast, I had forgotten that it was the beginning of the month, so I needed to do with the drawing, and I needed to help my son with some homework stuff, and now it's 7 o'clock. So it's very likely I will do the initial stuff, but not actually get this posted until tomorrow. Not that you'll notice, but in case you're wondering when you watch this. I also am hoping that the iPad doesn't die, because I normally make sure it's fully recorded, fully charged before recording. If it's a recording day, I normally start charging it before I leave for work. I totally forgot about it, and it was very low on battery, so it's currently plugged in. I'm hoping that the charging is taking place faster than the battery usage we are doing with recording. You are really a problem child. Alright, so this weekend, I hope all of you are good. There's a lot of snow here, which is why the drive home was so slow. Nothing compared to out east, but still more than we want to deal with. And this weekend I went to see Mom and my son, because my son is in show choir, as you know, and it was his school's turn to host the show choir event. So best friend and I went as parent volunteers. We were hall monitors. It was very exciting. But then Tiggy, I'm afraid he's going to catch the cord with his tail and whip it. He really likes to tangle things on his tail. Usually it's my spinning. Or Mom's crochet thread. I forgot what I was saying. Oh, we went to see show choir. I am going to post a small snippet of show choir stuff at the end of this. Hopefully YouTube won't recognize it as some sort of copyrighted item, because it is them singing. It's not the official recording. So it's them singing and dancing. And I just thought it was kind of a little clip that kind of really shows what they do in show choir. So anyway, and then Sunday we drove back, and it had started snowing Saturday night. I didn't want to drive back at night in the snow, so it was what it was. But Sunday, it was still snowing and blowing, and the drive home normally takes 2 hours, and takes just under 2 hours, and it took about 3.5. And we only stopped once, and that was to real quick fill the car with gas and get a coffee refill. So it wasn't hugely long. Best friend went in and got coffee while I put gas in the car. So, but it was a long drive. And luckily there were no backups or pileups. Somebody asked me, a waitress yesterday asked me that. And I said, no, there was no backups. It was just everybody was going 35 to 40 miles per hour on a highway that you would normally travel. You know, highway speed is 65, and of course most of us drive, 70 to 75. So it was slow. And there were, of course, some jerks. There's no better way to describe it, who think they can whiz by, and then some of them ended up in the ditch. We did see a couple spectacular spinouts. Luckily, no accidents. I mean, we saw people go in the ditch, but nobody looked hurt. And we saw one just really wild spin out going the opposite direction on the highway, and thankfully they didn't fall off and they didn't hit anybody. So they just kept going. Hopefully they got smarter. Don't know for sure. And there's no guarantee they got any smarter, because there was one car that we didn't see them spin out, but we saw the tracks where they must have spun out, and then they were trying to get back on the highway. And then later, that same car whizzed past us. It's like, didn't you learn the first time? So, whatever. This is going to be a very long show if I have to pet you the whole time. Thank you, everyone, for all your feedback about the discussion about charts last week. I wasn't quite sure how that was going to go, because it wasn't about how to use charts. But I also know that a lot of you also watched Tina's video and agreed that it really laid everything out for that. So that was good. Knitting. Not very exciting, but when we were at show choir, we did hall monitoring during the morning and early afternoon, and then stayed and watched the first performance of my son, and then best friend went home because he had a really bad headache, and I stayed and watched the evening performances. Sorry, curling up with Tiggy Tiger, I knew I was going to have to sneeze. While I love my cats, when they start shedding everywhere, I am allergic to them. So during the performances that I was watching, I did pull out my sock. I didn't knit on a whole lot, partially because at first I was sitting, well, I was mostly sitting with my son's girlfriend's mom, who I was meeting for the very first time. And, you know, there's that awkward moment of, you know, I'm a knitter. But then I got to the I'm twitchy sitting here, so I pulled out my knitting eventually. But I knit, I think the dark purple was mostly done. So, I don't know, maybe an inch. Wasn't a whole lot. But it did get work done. But that's my purse knitting. I mean, that's just what sits in my purse for things like that. I did finish my hot pads. So this is the one I showed you last week that was all done. This is the one I was working on, and I did indeed finish it that night. It's not quite a square, but whatever. And then I did one more over the next night or two. I don't remember. Actually, I do remember, sort of. I had this brilliant idea that I was going to seam this closed with a slip stitch and then flip it inside out, or flip it right side out. Yeah, you know, once you seam it, you can't flip it. There's no flipping. Best friend was having a grand old time laughing at me, and so I pulled out my slip stitch, and then I just left it, and the next day I seamed it the regular way. So, here it is. But I do have pictures of all three of these. Just a second. Alright, next, K-facet Afghan squares. You notice this is the square 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, I finished the last square. Now he's trying to eat the tissue paper. I swear, he gets love and attention. Anyway, the wonderful woman who sent me the yarn, it arrived, and so on Friday I finished the last square in this colorway. So, all 7 of Clue 8 are done, and as I had said I probably would, when I finished the hot pad, and before I got the yarn, I did start one one of the square 9s. So this is a square 9. And then I finished 2 more. These 2 don't have their ends woven in, but at least the knitting's done. I'll probably weave in the ends tonight. I don't like having too many stack up with their ends free because then I get annoyed having to put them together. And I weave my ends as I go, so they're already partially woven in. If you can see, this one weaves in on one row and then weaves in on the next row. I do that while I'm knitting, so I could almost just clip them and they would be fine, but I usually weave them back through one more time going through the yarn. So that means I finished 4 of these squares since the last time I talked to you. So I have 4 more to go. And then I will be done knitting squares. Of course, then I have to, block them and seam them all together into a blanket, but right now I just want to get the squares done. And I had told you that my goal was to get those done before the Yarnspirations Crochet Mystery Along starts up, and that starts up on February 10th. So it's February 3rd right now, so I have 7 days to finish 4 more squares. I think I can do it, so I don't see any reason why I can't do it, but every time I say that, something unexpected happens, like I spend a whole morning in the emergency room with best friend. So, although, to be fair, I got quite a bit of a hot pad done when I was in the emergency room. Alright, so, for the Mystery Knit Along, I did get my yarn. I had told you that I had picked gray, purple, fuchsia, and a teal. Originally we had picked a green, but we didn't like the green. And we actually originally put, where you're supposed to have one color becomes your primary, and you're supposed to have more of that one. We originally had picked the teal as the primary. Best friend really wanted gray, and so when I found gray, we turned that into the primary, and we took the green out altogether. According to the setup, you're supposed to have 2 skeins each of the secondary colors and 4 skeins of the primary color. However, the heathers are a smaller skein, so I got 5 of them. I actually need like 4.5, but so that's why I have 5 instead of 4. It just happened that, well, when I picked it up, it didn't feel as tightly wound as the other ones, and so I looked and then realized, oh, nope, it's not the same size. So, but I think it's going to work out really well. I do have a picture of that, so you can see it in better lighting than what I have here. All right, let's move on to the drawings for January. Now, I forgot to lock the thread, and so there were actually posts on February 1st that went into the January thread, and I thought about copying them and moving them, but there was a bunch of them, and I just decided it's fine. They can just be in the January thread, and as soon as I'm done here, I will open a February thread. But for January, there are 4 prizes. 2 of them are Ravelry pattern prizes for $15 worth of patterns. That can be one $15 pattern, that can be 1 ebook, that can be 5 $3 patterns, whatever, up to $15. That's 2 Ravelry prizes, and there's 2 Etsy gift certificates for $25. Starting now, there will only be 1 Etsy gift certificate. I didn't realize there was a minimum on Etsy that it has to, well, it has to be 25, 50, I'm assuming probably 75, 100, something like that. But anyway, there's a minimum of 25. So going forward, there will only be 1 Etsy gift certificate. But because I had already promised to, I just changed them. So we'll do the Ravelry prizes first, and then we'll do the Etsy prizes. All winners need to contact me. The people for the Etsy cards, I'm going to need your real life email address in order to send you the Etsy gift card. So, all right. I'm going to pause here because I'm going to merge photos in later. All right, winners for January. Winner 198, Pocketses, and her blue and purple striped socks. 140, Flancers, which is a snuggle blanket with her very cute puppy. Those were both Ravelry gift cards. For the Etsy cards, 144, Polkadej with her yellow hat, and 138, Kepig with her fuzzy cat toy. That's all. Alright, hopefully since I spliced that, I'll be able to put the photos in some way that makes sense. I'm trying to cut down on the fancy processing, but I have decided I still like just pausing and dropping in photos. That actually isn't that much extra work. So, but for doing the drawing, I'll probably fancy it up a little bit. Of course, you've already seen it now, so I don't know what it is, but you do. I was trying to think. I don't talk about what I'm reading a lot, mostly because I read fairly slow because of my, a lot of times my reading time and my knitting time conflict. And I don't do audiobooks while I'm knitting. I just don't. I have started doing audiobooks when I'm walking by myself. So sometimes I do that, especially if I can sync it with my Kindle book. Some Kindle books and Audible books you can sync together, and so when you are reading on your Kindle and then the next time you listen on Audible, it picks up right there, and then you listen for a while, and then the next time you pick up your Kindle, it's in sync. So you can switch off what you're doing. So I really like that. But anyway, the last book I read was called Jack and the Giants, and it was by Piers Anthony and someone else, and I did not like it. I recently joined Goodreads. If you're looking for me, I'm Dragonfly7673, as with anything. But I did not like that one at all. I thought it had gratuitous sex for no reason, and very flat, non-dynamic character building. It's rare for me to really dislike a book. I disliked that book. But I finished it because it was short, and I've put a reading goal out there for me. So I decided I might as well finish it and count it. But anyway, I am now reading a book on Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, which is a history book. It's a nonfiction book, which I don't normally do, but I got a little more interested when we went to Washington, D.C. last year. So I'm trying to find the cover. Jefferson and Hamilton, the rivalry that forged a nation. And this one, I do have the Kindle and the Audible, and so I was listening to it earlier. Amazingly, I was actually listening to that while I was knitting, when I was finishing up one of the squares. But normally I don't. Normally I do it while I'm walking. But that one, so far, is good. Now, I'm only into, I read the introduction, the prologue, and the first chapter. So, but so far, so good. Alright. We're almost done. I feel like there should be more to tell you, but there just really isn't that much. In the what do you want me to share? Oh, well, I did want to say one thing. Last week when I was recording, I said that the knit along with the Geeky Girls Knit, I said, well, it ends on February 28th, and today's the 26th, so you don't have that much time. Well, that's not true, because it was January 26th, and it ends on February 28th. There's a whole month. I mean, it's a short month, it's February, but there's still plenty of time, and I felt a little silly. I'm looking, somebody just posted, KPAR62 just posted about the Snuggle Project, so I'm going to read that. The Snuggle Project. You make blankets, soft pads for the animals to have in their kennels. It varies from place to place if the Humane Society or Pound will take them. The Snuggle Project's site has lists for the various places that will take them, along with general size guidelines. I can tell you that our local Humane Society loves the snuggles we send in. They also love just about anything else you can send in. We pick up boxes from warehouse stores for them to use as cat litter boxes, save and send in our newspapers, cardboard tubes, and egg cartons, only cardboard, and make up cat toys from polar fleece leftovers. So, that was a new charity that I didn't even know was going to be there until just now. What I was aiming for was the what do you want me to share about thread, and I was going to tell you, I did receive my Yarnet. However, since the only thing by the time I received it, I was done with the hot pads, or like just about done. And these use at least 2 balls of yarn at any given point. So this wasn't going to work. But the idea is that your yarn goes in there. In here there's a strap you can attach. So you can carry it around, and supposedly it keeps everything nice and safe. And the bottom helps it stay flat on a table, and the bottom also comes out so you can store some items underneath. I have not used it yet at all, so I will be reviewing it at some point, but it won't be until I've had a chance to actually use it, because otherwise, what's the point? So, that is coming. I do have it. I haven't forgotten about it. The next question, and I'm hoping people will put more questions or items on here because we're going to run out soon. But the next one is from Spinnin' Lady. She says, I would love to hear about your first knitted project, why you knit it, and what happened next. Everyone's knitting history is so interesting. Also, if I can ask another question, what knitted project are you most proud of, and can we see it? I decided one day, I was working on so many projects at work that were never ending and had no concrete anything to them, that I really needed something. Combine that with the fact that I had been snacking all the time because I was fidgety. There's never been a point in my life where I could sit still very easily. When I was in high school, I used to make friendship bracelets all the time in class. I stopped that at some point, and then my fidgety became eating. You know, popcorn is a good way to keep your hands busy. So are Cheetos. And so I decided I was going to start knitting. And to be honest, I did not tell Mom or Tiff that I was going to knit because both of them already did it, and I didn't want any advice. I didn't want anybody getting excited. I didn't know if it was something I was going to like. And the very first thing I knit was a garter stitch scarf. Now, I actually just donated that garter stitch scarf during our December, donate anything handmade. I donated that. It was a perfectly good scarf. I made it in one solid color of navy, combined with a multicolor, but it was honestly boring. I mean, it's garter stitch for a long time. But I made it in blocks of color, and I was really proud of it. And because I was doing stuff, I wasn't eating. And then I moved on to making a hat. Now, I learned to knit from the kids' Klutz book. Klutz, Klutz. They have a bunch of things like learning how to juggle, learning how to knit, learning how to crochet. I learned from that book. And it did a great job of teaching me how to knit, how to purl. Ribbing confused me. I struggled really hard with ribbing. I didn't do it right away. But I knew how to knit and purl. I made my son a hat, and it was a rolled brim hat, so it was purely stockinette, and then I learned how to decrease with that, and it was knit flat, and then you seamed it up. It was made out of acrylic. It was itchy, and yet he wore it proudly. He put a fleece hat on underneath it because, well, it was bad. It was itchy. The next year for Christmas, I rewarded him with an alpaca hat, which we still have. I will say he never lost his stuff, so he got an alpaca hat next, which was much softer, but also too drapey for what it was. I have a wool allergy, and what I have learned over time is that I'm allergic to the lanolin in wool, so the more processed a wool is, the more likely I'm okay. The more raw it is, I'm likely to break out into hives and my asthma acts up. Anyway, so it was a while before I learned I could work with any sorts of wool, which is why he ended up with alpaca, because alpaca was softer than acrylic, and those were the only two things I knew that I could knit with. I made Tiff a purse. I made a baby blanket for somebody I worked with who was having a new baby. And I don't know if I would have kept up with it, except for I was really into it. I started reading The Yarn Harlot and feeling like I had kind of found my thing. And at the time, my son was going to a Sylvan after-school program to help with reading. And I was spending a lot of time at Barnes & Noble's down the street because it was too far away to go all the way home and wait for him. I spent a lot of time in the knitting section. And I met a woman who came up and she was like, "Hello, knitter," and she started talking to me and she was all excited. And then through her, I found out about Ravelry. And suddenly there was this whole community. So it wasn't just me knitting in the corner at Barnes & Noble. It was everybody. And it just kind of went from there. And what I like is that at any given point, I could be doing something super simple. I mean, when I started these squares, they were exactly what I needed because I was going through all the changes at work. I needed something dead simple. Now I'm to the point where it's like, okay, I'm kind of done. I need something more interesting again. But you can do something simple. You can do something totally mindless that keeps you from driving everyone crazy at the movies. You can do something incredibly intricate like the Even Star shawl, and all of it's good, and you're producing something. That's my biggest thing. I honestly, most of the time, socks I wear, hats kind of get given out to whoever they fit unless they were intended for somebody. I don't wear my shawls, hardly ever. I just like making them. You can help people with it. You can, but the biggest thing for me is I'm making something because there's nothing else in life that's concrete. I mean, helping my son, yes, eventually if he gets good grades, that's great. But there's a lot of struggle in between. Stuff I do at work, I'm a manager. I don't make anything. Sometimes I fix problems, but you know, then the next problem comes and there's no stopping. That's why I knit. That's my history. I'm struggling with the question of what I'm most proud of. Because I'm a process knitter, most of the time I am continually doing something I am proud of for whatever reason. Whether it was my first sock. My very first sock was way too big. I didn't understand negative ease. I wrote a whole blog post about it back when I was just blogging before I had a video. But I was still proud that I made a sock. It was a perfectly good sock. It didn't fit me, but it was one perfectly good sock. I'm really proud of my first lace shawl, the one I showed you last week. because it was the first time I had done knitting with lace charts. I was extremely proud of the Even Star. I did it during the initial, when it was a mystery knit along. And, I mean, it was hard, and it was the first thing I did that had lace going both directions in parts of it, and that was, I was really proud of that. Proud of the very first socks I made, which were actually tube socks, because it was the first time I figured out how to knit in the round on DPNs. Proud of the next socks I made because I learned how to do toe-up socks that were also magic loop. Proud of one of the first hats I made because I had cables. There's just, I don't know how to pick one, because most things I'm trying to do for something, either because I think it's really awesome, because it's a new technique. I feel like I should point you to my project page and say, what am I proud of? This. All of this. You know, my Fair Isle sweater, my stranded colorwork purse, which all the knitting is done. It needs to have a fabric lining and strap attached. And someday maybe I'll just ask Mom if she could help me with the fabric lining. But I did the part that I cared about, which was the color work, honestly. I'm proud of all of it. I'm even proud of my wonky blanket. It's this garter stitch log cabin from Mason-Dixon. And I did not understand that you were counting ridges instead of rows. So when it said 25 ridges, I counted 25 rows, which it really should have been 50 rows, because one ridge is 2 rows back and forth. It is awful. It's all wonky. It is now a blanket that goes into the cat crate. Later, I made another one the correct way. So I was proud of the wonky one because I finished it and I figured out eventually what I did wrong, because I really was struggling with what did I do wrong. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't know why. And then one day, all of a sudden it was like, poof, that's what I did wrong. And then I made another one that was correct, so I beat it. I won. I'm proud of my spinning because I figured it out. I'm proud of my crochet. The first crochet project I did was a scarf. I took a crochet class at a local yarn shop and I made a scarf, and then I made a multicolored scarf for Tiff where you were joining motifs as you go, and then I was doing some amigurumi animals, and suddenly I could crochet. Now I'm not as good as Mom, and I don't like the tiny little thread, but I did it. I do it. I'm signing up, but I still think myself as primarily a knitter, but I crochet also. It's, you know, I'm not a one camp or the other. That was a lot of information, and I'm not I think I answered your question the best I can. I think that's it. Please post more in the what do you want me to share thread, because, like I said, we are getting low, especially if I keep recording every week. Karen Around the Twist, I mentioned she had posted her first episode. Well, by the time I mentioned that, and then I went and looked, she'd actually posted 2 more, including one that day. So, she has 3 new episodes. She's on YouTube and on her blog. She's still got a blip channel. I'm not sure how she managed to keep her blip channel, but I don't know what the RSS feed is, so I'm not getting her in Downcast. So right now I'm subscribed to her on YouTube, and it sends me a email. And as long as she keeps them at 30 minutes and I can super speed them on YouTube, I can keep watching. Because I actually snuck and watched them during small breaks at work while I was trying to do something else that didn't require a lot of brain work. I think that's it. People that won, please contact me. If you won the Ravelry patterns, just tell me what patterns you would like. And if you won the Etsy gift card, I'm going to need your real email address. Preferably the email address you use to log on to Etsy, If you've never used Etsy, then just send me your email address. I don't think it really matters, but that's it. I will talk to you guys all next time. Bye now.